Are I bonds still worthwhile? That's what I'm thinking. Just last week, the Treasury announced their new rates for I bonds, those inflation-protected bonds we've talked about in the past. And the new rates that are available now for bonds purchased from November through April is just over 5.25%. So a pretty nice rate for a guaranteed fixed tax-deferred investment. And so it has me thinking about those again. Quick refresher on those I bonds. Remember, those are ones you can only buy $10,000 per person per year. You can't get into it at all within the first year. And if you sell it within 5 years, you have to give back 3 months of interest, right? And you got to use the Treasury Direct website, which can be a hassle. You can't buy it through Schwab or anyplace else, right? So some rules that go around it. But remember, a couple of years ago, we were talking about these because they were paying 9% and 7% annualized interest. I mean, a really great deal even after you gave back 3 months of interest on the short run. And then as inflation sort of tapered down, the last 6 months, they were getting something like 3.5%. And so we were talking with folks about, geez, does it make sense to keep those things? Again, 3.5% is not a terrible rate, right? But compared to now, bank accounts and CDs are catching up. It's not the slam dunk it used to be. And the discussions we had were, hey, on the short-term hit thing, it's not necessary to keep those guys. However, if you're concerned about inflation longer term and you're going to have some cash reserves, inflation kicks back in again, these could be in a good spot with things. So that brings us back now to what the current rate is, this 5.25%. Importantly, it's not that the inflation amount adjusted that much, but remember on those I bonds, there's a fixed rate, a guaranteed rate, and then the inflation-based variable rate. Well, a few years back, and for a long time now, the base rate had been at 0. Then they ticked up a little bit. Now they've ticked up a little bit more, and we can pull this up on the Treasury Direct website here. There's that 5.25 rate. But of that, 1.3% of that is the base guaranteed rate, and you get that as long as you keep this bond. You can have that base rate for 30 years. And that might not sound like a lot, 1.3%, but remember, it was just 2 years ago, right? Fall of 2021, the 10-year Treasury, locking your money up for 10 years, you were only getting 1.25 or 1.5% on that, right? So to have this inflation-adjusted bond now where the base guaranteed rate is at that 1.3% level could be useful, could be appealing in the right circumstance with things. So it's worth considering, if you haven't bought any recently, if you have extra cash, maybe you're looking at buying a CD, these I bonds are back in a position where it makes sense to at least consider them. Some drawbacks, right? You got to deal with that Treasury Direct website, but it's something that should be back on our radars. So that's what I'm thinking about. As always, interested in knowing what you're thinking about. If you're watching this on YouTube, jot a comment in the comment box or shoot me an email directly. And as always, thanks for watching.